Welcome back, guys, to another data mine on this channel. With all the commotion that was going on this weekend, I almost missed the announcement of this event. It's a minor event after all, no URs, but nonetheless we'll be getting a few new ships and equipment today. This new Soviet-Russian event goes by the name in English Frostfall. It'll bring with it 3 new Soviet naval ships as well as 3 new equipment. On top of that, this event will be a new type of event. The event map will look very different from what we've seen before. It almost looks like a new version of Operation Siren, so to speak, and it will bring about a new user interface because of the new mechanics that it will introduce. Basically, during the event, there is a combat mode which will allow you to switch between single team combat mode and multi-team combat mode. Single team is where you use a single team, and in between each battle, you will reset all of your HP and statuses. Multi-team attack uses a different team for each level, and you will get extra rewards if you do this. These new mechanics go with the new type of event that we'll be having. This will hopefully be a new change of pace in the way that events are done. If it's done really well, we might see it more in the future. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this new style of event. However, as with all events, we will be getting new skins. The theme this time is onsen skins. All of the new girls will of course get skins, but we also get skins for other girls, and a lot of these will actually be L2Ds, or dynamic animations. Joffrey, Grozny, and Trieste all get this luxury, and of course we will be getting a main skin finally. As for the event, it's going to be based around accumulation of points. One of the rewards will be a Tashkent destroyer gun, which will be nice, as well as the new SR Kursk heavy cruiser gun. Also, before I forget, we will also be getting in this update the cruise mission update. This of course will happen at the end of the month, so we won't see it today, but the files have been added to the game today. This includes if you decide to purchase the season pass, the Vaclin skin, as well as La Galissonnière META, who I'll be discussing first today, so let's get into it. Stat-wise, this Vichy France light cruiser is going to be very similar to her base form. She is definitely more offensive oriented stat-wise. She gives up a little bit of her EHP ability. Funky enough, actually, her efficiencies are not exactly the same. Her meta version gets extra anti-air efficiency. Not like it matters much, but that's just a new trend. Her skill number 1 states that first of all, she gets plus 8% to her firepower and torpedo stat, so that's nice. And that every 5 main guns that she fires additionally launches a Hammer of Judgment barrage. This goes towards the closest enemy. Enemies hit by this barrage have their speed slowed to 0 for half a second, and then they get the Judgment debuff that lasts until the end of the battle. So it's a little bit of a freeze. It's only half a second though, so it's like really just a stun. And we'll have to see if that marker corresponds to any of her other skills. Skill number 2, every 20 seconds she procs an Adjudication Axe barrage, and that applies a special burn on the enemy that can stack with other burns. Additionally, if that axe hits an enemy that was already marked by the Judgment debuff from skill number 1, La Galissonnière META will deal 20% more damage to that enemy for the next 10 seconds. So here we go. This is the part of the skill that stacks with that first skill. So you have to hit her basically with 2 barrages, and then you get an extra 20% damage. Overall, La Galissonnière META seems kind of weak. The gimmicks of the 2 barrages can be kind of fun. 20% extra damage is nice, but it's only 10 seconds, and it's only for her, and it requires her to have a setup, and it's going to take over 20 seconds to do. And this is really all while she doesn't even do a lot of damage herself. Her DPS is pretty pitiful. I wouldn't use her in any battles outside of maybe those battles that only take a significant amount of damage from meta ships. For example, the Queen Elizabeth meta fight with her knights. And even then, La Galissonnière META is probably not one of the best meta ships to bring for that type of fight, so I think she's collection only again. And with that, let's move on to the Frostfall special event ships. First up, we have the SR Soviet heavy cruiser Kursk. And she really stands out stat-wise, and not really in a good way. She has light armor and less than 5,000 HP. This is like in the territory of like elite collab ships. I just looked it up, and like she's kind of close to Bolzano. Of course, she does have decent evasion, but we're not talking amazing evasion like Anchorage or something like that. We're talking about like the levels of like Prince Aldebert or Prince Heinrich. Luckily, what she lacks in survivability, she actually kind of makes up for in some of her attack kit. First of all, she has a main gun +1, which is going to be necessary because she is a torpedo heavy cruiser, so she has all three. Her main gun +1 can be either a light cruiser gun or a heavy cruiser gun and is at 120% efficiency. Her reload stat is actually above average here, so in terms of her damage dealing capabilities, stats alone, she's decent. We'll have to take a look at her skills to get a full picture of what she does, but stat-wise, she kind of looks like a glass cannon. Skill number 1. At the start of the battle, if Kursk is the only Vanguard ship, so she wants to be alone, she increases her own firepower, torpedo stat, and hit stat by 15%, and she reduces the damage she takes by 15%. If there are at least 2 Vanguard ships, when Kursk sinks an enemy, she gets 15% to her firepower, torpedo, and hit stats for only 12 seconds. These cannot stack, but they do refresh. Okay, this skill is basically telling me that she's meant to be alone in 1-1 fleets. This is kind of niche, actually. It does say that, she can shoot down stuff and she can get those stats and they can keep refreshing, but it's only for 12 seconds and she doesn't have the damage reduction, which is going to be super important since she does not have a lot of EHP from her stats. This is kind of interesting. This tells me that she's really going to be kind of like a niche 1-1 fleet mobber, maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see where the other 2 skills lead us. Skill number 2. 3 seconds after the battle starts and every 15 seconds afterward, use 2 seaplanes to scout and attack once. These scale off her firepower stat. Each seaplane marks an enemy who will then receive 10% more damage from Kursk for 10 seconds. These can stack, which is kind of a funky way of just saying that if the 2 planes hit the same target, it's 20% extra damage from Kursk only. This is pretty good. 3 seconds after the battle is really nice. It also can reveal, which is cool. And 15 seconds is not too long to wait for the next one. I like this skill. It's another seaplane Vanguard ship. Skill number 3. Every 15 seconds, I like these low timers here, she summons 2 flea mini submarines. Ooh, interesting. So she's like literally spam summoning everything. These launch torpedoes, which have a 70% chance to cause special flooding. This stacks on top of normal flooding, and this applies for 10 seconds. These scale with her torpedo stat, not her firepower stat, and these mini subs leave after 10 seconds. This is actually really nice, so she can inflict flooding damage from torpedoes. She also can use her firepower stat to launch seaplanes. It would be nice if that seaplane launch actually happened before the submarines, because the submarines come out at 15 seconds and the seaplanes will come out at 3 and 18 seconds, so they're going to be kind of off target for their schedule of damage. Her first skill really just tells me that she has to be alone, especially for her survivability. I don't know how I feel about Kursk. I feel like she could have been good a while ago, especially if we were trying to do 1-1 fleets and trying to save oil and things like that. She's certainly unique. I really do like her seaplanes and submarine summons. Like, she's just like a summoning monster over here. She just seems a little bit too weak in terms of her EHP to talk about bringing her alone to any high level content. She doesn't make me super excited, but she is decent. All right, let's move on to the other SR we have in this event, the sister of light cruiser Kirov, Voroshilov. Stat-wise, Voroshilov looks kind of actually similar to Kursk. She has that similar health pool. She has light armor, but she's a light cruiser. And a light cruiser with 148 evasion. That's a huge difference. That is the second highest evasion of any light cruiser in the game, behind only Harbin. So she's really dodgy. Also, her setup for gear looks pretty decent. She obviously doesn't have a main gun +1 like Kursk does, but she gets a preloaded torp and an extra 30% extra main gun efficiency there. Stat-wise, she looks pretty good. She looks like she's actually kind of an evasion tank here. So let's see what her skills do. She's only got 2 of them outside of her all-out assault. Skill number 1, she gains an additional special secondary gun. Enemies hit by this special secondary gun get a stack of frozen debuff. Each stack slows for 2% for 4 seconds, and that can stack up to 10 times, so a 20% max. Although for only 4 seconds, you probably won't ever get to a full 10 stacks. We'll have to see what her gun looks like specifically, because this is a special secondary gun. So actually, this almost acts as like a main gun plus one. Well, I mean, we'll look at the gun in a second, but I'll finish this skill. So she has this slow. That's basically what it is, but it's a very minor slow. It's only 2%, so it's not a huge slow. Every 18 seconds, she procs a special barrage that's on top of her special secondary gun. If it hits an enemy that is frozen, that should be pretty easy. Clear the debuff, which is that freeze, that 2% freeze, which is pretty meaningless. And instead, she applies a 5% firepower damage taken debuff for 8 seconds. So they're going to take 5% more damage from firepower damage. And I believe that applies to all ships, not just damage from Voroshilov. So it could be your backline, your battleships, obviously not your carriers and things like that. This looks pretty interesting. There's a lot going on here. This is all going to come down to how good that special secondary gun is. So let's go take a look at what that is. All right, I'm here taking a look at the secondary ghost gun for Voroshilov. And it's pretty legit. 30 damage times 3 for shots, and it's every 2 seconds. So she's firing every 2 seconds this extra gun. All the efficiency armor modifiers are 100 across the board. That's really, really good against like heavy armor, getting 100 there, even though it's normal ammo. Honestly, 90 damage a shot. She's looking at one of the most powerful light cruiser gun shots that you could possibly have, and it fires every 2 seconds. It's very quick. This should really add a lot of DPS to her build, as well as make skill number 1 really easy to get those extra frozen debuffs, and especially remove those frozen debuffs so you can get those firepower damage taken buffs. Overall, this ghost gun actually is going to maybe potentially make this ship really, really good. All right, let's look at skill number 2. Skill number 2, she loses 3 speed. Just flat off the bat. Like, I don't know why they just didn't reduce 3 speed from her stats and just not worry about it in the skill, but whatever, it is what it is. Plus 8% evasion rate though, and that's really good. It's going to help her tankiness. She already has a really, really high evasion, so evasion rate is much easier to stack on top of that, so really helps her survivability. She's a really tanky ship, I think, with EHP here. And continuing, when she fires her anti-air guns, she gets 15% extra evasion, like she needed it, but great. And remember, it's not shoot down a plane like a lot of these, it's when she fires the AA guns. That's basically whenever a plane enters the map. So that's actually really, really easy to trigger, and it's really cool. Also, aviation damage that she takes is reduced by 15% for 8 seconds. There is a 20-second cooldown on this skill. That makes sense. It kind of sucks because, you know, obviously you might see more than, 2 flights of planes in a 20-second period, but it shouldn't be too bad. So basically in that time, she's going to reload, fire, and when she fires, she gets the evasion buff, and she also takes less aviation damage. And if we recall, her anti-air stats actually decently high. It's over 400. Her anti-air efficiencies for her guns are decent. It's above average at 110%, but not, amazing. But together, actually, she's pretty tanky, especially if you're taking 15% less damage from aviation type damage. This ship's actually really surprisingly good. It's pretty tanky. It can deal with any sort of aviation damage that's coming in. It also has a ton of evasion, so it should be pretty good at dodging shells. If you put it in a fleet that's kind of speedy, that could be really helpful, or adding smoke screens, that could be really, really helpful. It's got some good DPS. You wouldn't think that, but then it basically gets a ghost gun for skill number 1, and that ghost gun is through the roof nuts. It's like very good ghost gun. I honestly think Voroshilov is potentially better than Kursk, which is kind of weird because I thought Kursk was definitely going to be better, and Kursk, on paper kind of almost feels better, but Voroshilov seems so fun and good, and this seems like the ship that is what you're going to want to pick up or want to target. Of course, I don't think this is a must pick up ship. I think there are plenty of other great light cruiser options out there if you have them and don't want to spend the cubes for some reason or not, but I do actually think this ship is very, very good from my first reaction to it. I'm very excited to test it later today. Also, its plus 120 fleet tech is evasion stat, which is super nice. Like, amazing and also just makes sense given how much evasion she has all across the board. She's just so tanky. Trying to wrap my head around how tanky this one is going to be is fantastic. I am very excited about her. Obviously not meta defining. However, I really do think you should try and pick her up if you have more than 300 cubes. All right, let's move on to the last ship. I would say last but not least, but it is the elite ship. It's Gangut's sister, the battleship Sevastopol. Stat-wise, she looks near identical to Gangut, which is not really a great thing. She does have a higher main gun efficiency, which on the surface is great, but if we remember, Gangut has a skill that increases her main gun efficiency, so we'll have to see what skills lie. Maybe she doesn't have a skill like that, and maybe that's why it is by default higher on Sevastopol. Skill number 1 for this ship, when she fires her main gun, there's a 50% chance that she launches a barrage and buffs all of your battleships 8% damage for 10 seconds. This is really interesting. It's only a 50% proc chance, but it can buff all of your battleships, and if you have them all firing in a row, that 10-second window should be pretty easy to hit there. 8% damage modifier is actually pretty significant, so I actually do like this skill. I mean, 50% though, you can't rely on it, and it's kind of hard to deal with that. And of course, the damage that she's dealing herself is not a lot. She's going to definitely be dealing 8% less damage than, say, a UR, so not necessarily something that you'd love to bring, but maybe if you need to play something in the Northern Parliament faction, but even then, I don't know. It's a pretty hard sell. Let's see what her second skill does. When her main gun fires, so, based on her barrage battleship, both their skills are based on when she fires that salvo, so yeah, definitely. She randomly heals an ally ship for 8%, and if it is a Northern Parliament ship, it also is buffed with 15% evasion for 10 seconds. So this is nice, like basically it's a heal on fire, and of course she's also going to get a barrage on high fire, and she also potentially can buff all of your other battleships on fire. So really based on firing. Honestly though, Gangut seems like she could be, I don't know, they just seem very similar. Gangut obviously is going to buff all of your Northern Parliament ships when she fires, but she's also going to be able to fire a little bit early. She also is going to have a higher main gun efficiency, but she's locked into using that one gun. So I don't know, both of them are kind of niche ships if you're trying to run something funky in Northern Parliament, because the Russians don't really have a great backline set. Obviously, Sovietskaya Soyuz is just not around yet, so they're really struggling in the backline. So until then, you can kind of play around with these ships, these Gangut class ships. I don't know. It's pretty much collection tier unless you're trying to do something funky with the Russians. Interesting, but not particularly great. All right, that is it for the ships today, but we still have 3 new equipments to go over, and I'm excited to show these off to you guys as well. First up is the action report Frostfall, which you will get basically by completing the event. It gives you plus 16 firepower at plus 11 and plus 11 hit stat at plus 11. It also gives 3 luck to the ship that it's equipped to if it is a Northern Parliament ship. This is just kind of collection. This is not really that great. I mean, if you're newer, this is a free item to put on your Russian ships if you want. You could put it definitely on Kursk or Voroshilov. Both would be fine. Not amazing, but pretty decent. Next up is the purple triple 180mm B1P 1932 model light cruiser gun. And as you might expect, these elite or tier 2 guns probably not meta defining, and you would definitely be correct. The damage is lacking, but also that fire rate at 3.5 seconds is actually pretty slow, and it is AP ammo, but its armor modifier for heavy armor is 65. Just put in perspective, the special secondary ghost gun for Voroshilov does more damage, it fires faster, and it has a better armor modifier even though it's normal ammo. So, I mean, just to put in perspective, this gun is not very good. All right, let's move on to the last one, the triple 240mm gun. This is a heavy cruiser gun. This is going to be the Kursk gun. And this gun looks to be pretty good. It's an AP ammo gun, so it's definitely going to be primary focus on heavy armor and a little bit of medium armor. It actually does damage at 55 times 6 shells per burst, which is amazing. That's similar to the Drake gun. It's a little bit slower than the Drake gun, but it's actually actually on par with some of that damage. In fact, with the spread and the volley and all of that sort of thing, if we're talking just heavy armor, this gun is pretty similar to the Drake gun, which is the best heavy cruiser gun by a long shot. Of course, it doesn't hold a candle to it in the light or the medium armor department, but it also doesn't take forever to get. I would say this is almost a must pick up because not only is it event exclusive, but if you don't have a Drake gun, this is something you can use. Drake guns are hard to come by, and if you're fighting against heavy armor, you can just use this as an alternative if you're a newer player, or even if you're a veteran player and you don't have multiple Drake guns or something like that. This is good to have in your repertoire or just whatever. So this is actually a really good gun. Obviously, the Drake gun is just absurd. It's like you put it on everything, but not everyone has 3 of them and can swap them around as they need be. This gun's really good against heavy armor, just straight up. All right, and with that brings the conclusion of what we're getting in this new update. It's a smaller event. There is no UR here, but it did bring us a lot of interesting stuff. It brought us some good guns. It brought us some unique ships that are doing their own thing. I'm very happy with most of what came here. All of it was pretty fun to read, and I'm excited to pick it up. I hope that you guys pick it up. I think Voroshilov is probably the top tier target of this banner, but keep in mind, we are getting a New Jersey rerun, and if you do not have 400 cubes stored away for that, and you don't have New Jersey yet, you might want to hold off on this event. Now, I don't think you have to be exactly at 400 for this event. You can go down to maybe 300, but if you are lower than 300 cubes and you do not have New Jersey, this might be an event that you consider passing. But if you're over 300 cubes or you already have New Jersey, I think this is, pull the trigger, go for these ships. These are very cool ships, I think, especially Voroshilov. I think that ship is amazing. Obviously, play the event and get the equipment because why not? And we're not expecting to have a UR probably until May, so if you already have New Jersey, you're probably fine on cubes until then. All right, guys, thank you guys for watching. I super appreciate it. Hope you liked and enjoyed this data mine. Of course, if you were following my events last weekend, that was a lot of fun, and I plan on making a recap video for Carrier Con coming up, so stay tuned for that. And otherwise, take care until next time.